You are getting ready to listen to the voice of Dr. Rhadi Ferguson, 2004 Olympian, four-time national judo champion, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, author, speaker, and coach.
You ready?
Yep. One sec. There we go. I'm good. I'm doing one last thing. Set myself to unavailable. Fantastic. Good to go.
Ready?
Yep.
All right, what's going on? This is Dr. Rhadi Ferguson, and welcome to another edition of Coffee with Rhadi. The one thing about Coffee with Rhadi is I have a lot of latitude to do some of the things that I want because basically, I'm in charge. So today I have a good friend, a colleague, and now kind of like my boss, if you will, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Christopher Round. Now, Dr. Chris Round is a highly accomplished climate change analyst specializing in ecological systems and environmental adaptation. Beyond his expertise in climate science, he's also an exceptionally well-trained martial artist, holding black belts in both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo. Dr. Round has been coached and mentored by some of the most respected figures in Judo, including Jim Pedro Sr., Jim Pedro Jr., and I've had the opportunity to work with him myself for almost like 7 years as a client, maybe more than that. He has a deep understanding of both scientific ecological systems and martial arts pedagogy and martial arts andragogy. And this uniquely positions him to bridge the gap between theory and practice in terms of skill acquisition and skill development. As an expert in both the constraints-led approach and traditional drilling systems, Dr. Round embodies the hybrid training philosophy championed by myself. And the reason why it's championed by me as well is because he had to hammer home into my thick skull why the CLA approach works, the efficacy of it, when to use it, when not to use it, and also how to couple it with deliberate practice. And he's an expert in combining this structured technical refinement with ecological adaptability to develop the most effective athletes possible. So with Dr. Round's scientific background in ecological systems and his extensive combat sports experience, he's uniquely qualified to discuss the merits, limitations, and best applications of eco-based learning, drilling, and hybrid training methodologies. So today we're excited to have Dr. Round on the podcast to dive into these topics and explore what truly works in high-performance combat sports training. Now, let me also say this. We are also on the podcast today with the current reigning national championship team from the 2024 USA Judo National Judo Championships. Dr. Round was the head coach for High Noon Judo Club that won the team championship. So it was actually his first national championship that he won. And I was able to have somewhat of a hand in it, and that my daughter was also on the team, which was absolutely fantastic.
That was so fun.
It was great to watch him. Like, he was a client of mine. Now I work for him in his 501c3 that he's going to explain a little bit about. And my daughter is now coached by him as well. And my son, who attends Howard University. So welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Coffee with Rhadi, Dr. Round.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. First thing I ask you, what coffee are you drinking?
This is some low level. It's Victor Allen's coffee, but they make a caramel blend and it works for my Keurig. It has a nice smooth flavor. Now, here's the thing, okay? I doctored up with a scoop of Cafe Bustelo because I love Cuban coffee. So it has a sweetness to it without any sugar, and then I give it a little caffeine steroid kick with the Cafe Bustelo, the instant brand. That's what I'm drinking. But thank you for asking. Nobody really asked. I'm a coffee nerd.
Yeah, well, it's Coffee with Rhadi. We got to talk a little bit about coffee.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. As mentioned, you were one of my mentors for many, many years. And we have the opportunity to work together and try to put some people on an Olympic team and have a lot of success on the judo side. So it's really a joy to be on here.
Absolutely fantastic. Hey, tell us about your master's program, if you will. Let's start
Sure.
then I'm gonna hammer some questions at you, my man, and then we'll probably at the halfway point we'll kind of it'll be more a little bit more collaborative. But in the beginning, man, I'm gonna hammer some questions at you.
That's fine. So Masters stands for Martial Arts for Social Transformation, Equity, and Rights. It's 501c3. We're based out of Virginia. What we do is Masters was founded effectively to address a few different things. First and foremost, we are interested in issues of equity. We're interested in issues of access. So we do some work with, we're partnered with Hiding Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Fitness. I run the judo program there as part of this. And we provide opportunities for people to get on the mat who might otherwise not have the opportunity. So we set up martial arts scholarships. So that's one portion of the program. And then the other portions of the program where we help to train instructors to ensure that we have instructors that understand kind of the latest and greatest in pedagogies, and we create training opportunities. And the last thing, and this is where you and I work very closely together, is on the elite athlete development. So what we do is we go out, we scout, we find a set of athletes that we can provide access to high level coaching at effectively for free. And we work closely with them and we're trying to help them get either to the 20 Olympics or as far as they can go. Because we have some fellows that, they're not going to the Olympics, but hey, they might be great instructors someday. Or hey, this is someone who's a great presence on the mat and we know they're going to make everyone better around them. And we try to help them reach their human potential.
That's a tough part in our sport. I noticed when I first started with this kind of model earlier, a lot of people were accusing me of poaching players, you're poaching players, not understanding that if you play football or if you play soccer or you play basketball and you go to an outside coach, that's more of a tutoring model. Everybody can stay with their home coach and still be tutored by another coach. It's in judo, it's really difficult to get people to understand. I would say on a local level, with as much as our sport has developed, that you need more than one coach.
Yes.
When I was coming up, I had Eddie Liddy was my overall judo coach. Angelo Ruiz was my technical coach. Eddie handled most of my grip fighting and tactical and strategic development. My Newaza coach, this was Lord Irvin. My strength and conditioning coach was JC Santana. And then I had a lady by the name of Tanisha Curry, who was my spiritual advisor, someone who I prayed with. We fasted and did those, to cover the whole approach. I had a team of people that helped me. And then there was a guy by the name of Dr. Nick, who was chiro and a masseuse that I used. But there's a team of people that it takes to get this accomplished. And the thing that I enjoy on the master side is you have brought masters in to provide that team that people that they don't have. Like we have strength and conditioning professionals, we have access to doctors, we have access to philosophers, we have access to we have a quality think tank at Masters that allows us to do a lot of work. We have 2 Olympians on staff, myself and Miss Lauren Reese. And we have people that have a background in military science and understand strategy and the art of war. And we sit down and we do the best that we can for these particular athletes. And the one thing that I really like is that it's an inclusive environment.
Yes.
And somebody who I'm the chairperson for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the United States Judo Association. And as someone who leads that charge, I not only like to say that I do it, but I want to show people that I do it by working in an environment where you actually bring resources to people who would not normally have them. So kudos to you on what you do. I've watched you develop over the years from when you didn't have your undergraduate degree and we walked through the masters, and I watched you put together judo programs at Indiana University. You brought in high-level practitioners to educate and teach people. You've been doing this for years, and you've refined it to the point where you are now, and this you can't even deny it. Like you are one of the best judo coaches in the country. And well done, man. I mean, well done. To sit back and watch you, it's been an honor to watch you develop. Well done, my man.
Thank you very much. You played a key role in that, and I really appreciate that.
All right, I don't want to big you up too much. I want your head, but you did a good job. So let's start here. There are some in the debate space, if you will. In the debate space of ecological
Let's be clear.
dynamics.
We're talking about people arguing on the internet in
Yes,
that
exactly.
space.
That space.
In the space of people arguing on the internet, which is a
Oh my
space that I
God.
have frequented. Continue.
Yes. It is how we met. But we'll
Yeah.
talk about that on another podcast.
Let's not talk about that yet.
And the debate between so what we call ecological dynamics and the constraints led approach and the drilling framework.
Yep.
There are five like major arguments that I want to go over. But before I go over that, I would like you to explain the differences between or among ecological dynamics, the constraints led approach, and the drilling frameworks.
Sure. So, all right. The way I like to think about this is these frameworks, we're trying to draw a circle. And not to be too abstract. And effectively, we're talking about linear versus nonlinear teaching. In some way, like if you're familiar with like a Montessori program versus a more classical teaching program, we're talking like whole of language versus phonics. Is the way when you and I were chatting, when I started turning you on to this. So ecological is a nonlinear teaching pedagogy that attempts to allow students to learn the key movement patterns they need to learn to perform a series of tasks by changing the environment and adjusting the incentives so that they perform those tasks. It's actually very similar to, and I'll run back on this. Part of why I was personally attracted to this has a lot to do with my academic background, but versus a more drilling essential approach is I'm going to teach you each pathway to reach that task. So effectively, an ecological approach, what you're going to do is you're taking a marker and you're making broad strokes and trying to slowly make that circle. It's not going to be as precise, but you will make a circle quicker. When you're doing drilling, I'm making each individual dot. Now, both will create the circle. Let's be very clear. How precise that circle is and how, what exactly that circle is going to do and what diameter and what I need that, are we making a circle for a design for a hyper precise screw? Or are we just drawing something on a piece of paper just to have it?
Just to have something that's circular.
Yes. And look, I have some authority on topics that are circular. My last name is Round. So the ultimately, that's what we're talking about. One is I come in, you're going to drill a series of behaviors, you're going to build those neural pathways, and then I'm going to, through different stages, have you work towards being able to do that in the live setting we're aiming for. So I have operated across folk style wrestling, judo, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I am ultimately a judo coach primarily. And I've also done some work in the MMA world. And, so ultimately I'm trying to make sure people are ready to do a match. So here's the thing. The classic drilling approach, I came up under that for the most part, with a lot of situational randori. I did that work with you. I did that work with Jimmy. I came to the ecological approach kind of in the last few years. I did look at the work done by folks like Greg Souders. I did jump into some of the academic literature on the topic. Because here's the thing, I am happy to, one of the privileges I have in life is I get access to academic libraries very easily. And I can go in and jump and say, okay, so what is the actual academic literature saying? And by the way, for those who don't know, there's a fair amount of academic literature on judo and on all of these topics. So, Instagram reels are great, but if you cannot get opportunity, there are published books that actually talk about these things. So ultimately, one example of them would be, I might show you how to do ouchigari. That's a classic skills drill based approach. And I go have you do X number of reps. An ecological version, I may tell you your goal is to get the back of your right knee, if you're a righty, behind the back of their left knee. And I might have you start from a grip. I might not, but I just say that is your goal. And they're going to do two different things. You will learn a precise version of how to do ouchigari under the traditional skill development phase. You will learn how to get to that ouchigari by me telling you got to get the back of your knee behind the back of their knee. You will learn how to create that space. And they're going to teach two different things. They're both going to get to the same place, but one will give you the context and the other one will give you the facts that are helped by that context. So I'm thinking about it from an argumentation point of view. So ultimately, I need to be able to do both. And this is particularly true because we talk about this sometimes in the ecological space, the ideas of invariance. There's certain movements that, regardless of your build, my build, their build, whoever, they are roughly the same. The classic example in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the armbar. A Judoka style armbar, we are isolating the shoulder. We are putting pressure against the back of the elbow. Classic example that's used in that space. Well, I'm not going to be able to simply eco that. I have to go in and use a original skills-based approach. I have to go and use this deliberate practice approach to develop that skill. So when we're looking at development, it's not either or. People are saying either or are trying to sell you something. And in fairness, I'm also trying to sell you something. So we're all trying to sell you something. But at the end of the day, a skilled coach needs to be able to spot when is one appropriate, when is the other appropriate. Eco will give you the context. It will give you the concept. Deliberate practice will give you the tool to use within that environment. So it's just a case of what are we trying to develop? Are we trying to develop our ability to navigate space to get my knee in the back of their knee? Okay, cool. We've gotten there using the eco approach, but now we need to actually be able to finish. Well, to be able to finish, we actually do need some time in the lab doing some deliberate practice and repping that out.
Right. So I look at it as it's like if I give you a toolbox and it has all the tools in it. I mean, socket wrench, hammer, nail, it has everything in it that you need. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I show you a piece of wood and I give you a screw and I said, I need you to screw that screw in that wood. It needs to be flush. And you say, okay, good. So you go through all of the things, you try to find the right head, either the Phillips head or hexagonal head or a flat head, and then you gotta make a small hole, and then like you can figure that out, or I can show you how to do it, and then watch you do it, and then tell you this is the way that I want it done. The one thing that I went over on another podcast was sometimes when dealing with tools like that, it's best to provide an ideal of how it looks like because we're trying to mitigate risk. Like you can grab the wrong tool and hurt yourself. We can practice something that if we have a room full of 8 to 12-year-olds and we're going over knee on belly, they can put the knee on the wrong position on the sternum and hurt each other and not put the shin all the way across. They can. So sometimes it's okay to show the technique and then ask them to mirror it instead of figuring things out when them figuring out can end up hurting themselves.
Yes.
But as you said before, both approaches have value, like both. Yeah, 100%. So let me ask you this. In the argument of structure versus emergence, and I had to write some of these things down because I want to make sure that people can utilize this as a training and educational tool.
Sure.
In structure versus emergence, yet the drilling perspective is, as you said, skills should be taught explicitly, broken down into repeatable patterns, and optimized for efficiency before being tested in dynamic environments. The eco-CLA perspective is that learning should kind of be organic and situational, allowing skills to emerge on an interaction with the environment rather than being pre-structured. So the argument is for you, is skill development best achieved, this is where you got to kind of pick one. Is it best achieved, and you can determine the population as well. Okay. Is skill development best achieved through explicit instruction and repetition, or by allowing learners to self-organize solutions through real-world constraints?
Yes. No.
and that's always the best answer. Yes. Fantastic.
So, all right, let's talk about the different populations for a second. And let's talk about what we're working on. Sorry, we're talking about whole judo. All right. We're talking about adult novices. Adult novices need to get up and running as quickly as possible to be able to move well, to be able to do judo safely, and to continue to show up and be part of the dojo culture, and also pay their monthly dues.
I'll say this from a non-technical side in support of what he's saying. More often than not, adults who come to the dojo, any dojo, they're making a decision of this dojo or 24-hour fitness, this dojo or LA Fitness, this dojo or going to Hot Works or something else. So you have to give them some things that are making them move, that's fun and keeping them engaged. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. So in that circumstance, you will get pretty far with an ecological approach. And the reason why is, and we're going to get into some elements around this because people, I think there are two elements of the debate that are being missed. One is psychological and the other is purpose. But I digress. When we look at...
Let me ask you a question. The purpose of the coach, the purpose of the individual, or the purpose of the school? I don't know if you're bringing in the capitalism side of it.
Yes. But
I like it. I like it. Yes, all of it.
Yeah. So when we look at it, if I want to just get general compliance, so I have a functioning student up and running, I can use an eco approach pretty fast. I can, in fact, okay, what are the prerequisites to be able to function well in a judo practice? To be able to move properly, Sugiyashi,
Yumiyashi, Sugiyashi.
Knowing where to put your hands, so basic kumikata.
Yep.
Being able to threaten a base, so effectively ashiwaza, be able to do something that involves turning your back, being able to pick up a leg, be able to isolate a limb or isolate the neck in Newaza transition, be able to do that while attacking turtle, be able to defend that while defending turtle, and likewise with flat, be able to get past the knees to pass guard, and be able to maintain guard. You can eco all of that and get a baseline person who can do most of the things. Will they be able to do those things at the level of Morale or Shohei Ono or Becca or Flavio? No, absolutely not. But they will be a functional practice partner that your elite folks can train with, and they will have fun and they will enjoy things. However, I will tell you right now, because I have been doing this now for a little while, of the things I mentioned, notice that I kind of gave it away a little bit by kind of very quickly saying, yeah, they have to be able to turn their back and then moving on to the other things. Because once we talk about turning your back, that we start to get into invariance. We start to get into the things that the gross motor requirements are high enough and you need to be precise enough that you actually do have to teach how to do that. I was going over Uchimata last night with one of the other instructors in my club. People will find a Uchimata left to their own devices. This is the great monkeys with typewriters thing. But they won't find it as quickly as they want to. They won't make the key adjustments as quickly as they'd want to. You can skip time in the process. At the end of the day, for all of this, regardless of what population we're talking about, the enemy of all grapplers is time. So the question is, how do we do this stuff efficiently and quickly? And it is much quicker for me to explain to you, okay, you're going to make the shape of a single leg RDL, where I try to get both hands towards the ground. I am going to bring my thumbs as I come in to my shoulders. We can have another discussion about Nage no Kata and what is an actual technique. If you want to go watch a really entertaining video on that, go check out Junho, and I think it's Hapani TV. I'm mispronouncing that. It's great material over there. But we're making single RDL, and we're trying to use the placement of our support leg to improve the likelihood of us completing the throw. So right there, we have a shape that we have to learn how to do and create. We have a key bit of information about the placement of the support leg and how we create the shape with our arms. And it is much faster for me to explain that to you than to try to create an incentive system that will allow you to find the movement. because this is what's going on. The ecological method is you're creating an incentive. You are a learning engineer. You're trying to create an environment. You're trying to create an ecological system that will incentivize positive behavior. You actually see this going back to my academic work. I was originally a trained ecologist, and we talk about this in terms of how species evolve and how they evolve in response to environmental conditions to meet a particular niche. I have a PhD in environmental policy. We talk about regulatory behavior. We talk about command and control versus market-based mechanisms. Market-based mechanisms are all about how you create incentives to produce this desired behavior. You see this in tax systems. I don't want to get into politics outside of martial arts politics, but just that's versus a command and control element might be saying you have to do X. And what we find again and again when we are talking about human behavior and learning and trying to get desired outcomes is that you need a mixture of command and control and incentive-based mechanisms. So, ultimately, so for that adult novice, I'm going to get pretty far using an eco as a base, using deliberate practice where I feel as though we can skip some steps. For kids, it's actually a similar population because I need the kids to stay in judo. And we can do fun and by the way, one key element is when the brain is having fun, the number of repetitions required to record the information goes down because it's in learning mode, quote unquote. I'm butchering the literature there a little bit, but nonetheless, that's the short version. Now let's talk about elite athletes. I require precision for elite athletes. I can give them that quick circle where I'm drawing slots the circle, but I do need direct measurements. I do need, yes.
I would like to interrupt for one moment for the listeners for this particular purpose. All right. Mm-hmm. Remember that when we're talking about adult novice and beginners for the children, they're not necessarily motivated to come to practice. The tasks and the games create the motivation for them so that they're having fun. The elite athlete, which is why we talk about the elite athlete comes with a high level of intrinsic motivation. So the elite athlete is not as concerned with, nor the coach, with providing elements of fun in the practice. Do we as coaches still provide some fun in the warm-up, through randori, through situational training where somebody wins and somebody loses? Yes, we do. But those things are more based upon pressure for situations. The difference in the population, it's not just the physiological differences, but also the psychological differences between the two populations. I wanted to make that clear to our listeners. So when we're talking about elite level athletes, we're just not talking about those people who can run faster, jump higher, do more push-ups and sit-ups. Those individuals come to the training understanding that training is going to be miserable. Hard. Yes. Okay. I just wanted to make that point. Go ahead, yes. Dr. Chris. Thank you.
Yeah. And by the way, this is where I want to, when talking to our audience, I just want to call something out. A lot of people have kind of an initial reaction one way or the other about some of these topics, because for a lot of people, including when we were initially having these discussions, there's a degree of defensiveness that can appear because what are we talking about? We're talking about what is the right way to train a student. And everyone's going to remember, well, this is how I came up. Are you saying how I was trained was wrong? Or how are you saying how I am training people was wrong? Well, to some extent, yes. That is we are having a discussion about pedagogy.
Can it be improved? Could you have done better?
Yes, we're talking about how do we get better, because at core to judo, yes, minimum effort, maximum efficiency, mutual benefit and welfare. Part of mutual benefit and welfare is making each other better and trying to get better every day. So I kindly ask everyone, if in any of this you start to feel that urge to hit that keyboard and be like, what the hell? All I did was 20 rounds of randori a day at Tokai University for 10 years, and that was enough for me. Well, you know what? There might have been a quicker way to do that. That's not invalid. It's just we are always learning and finding ways to get better at these things. So I just want to call that out. But anyways, to get back to it, there are certain things
you're at the elite level population now.
We're at the elite level population. With the elite level population, I need to provide context. That's where the task-based games come into play. I can get a lot of shit done, particularly for micro adjustments, small things that under the old system I might have to spend an entire practice on. People will find, and as long as I give them the opportunity to ask questions, we can make adjustments. I'll give you a good example. An RVL, so right versus left, keeping from getting what's called crunch, protecting your posture when you have the inside lapel. Before, I might have people spend a lot of time drilling where they place that inside hand, moving it out to catch the bicep when the hand comes over the top, stuff down that line. I can fast forward that by simply saying, here's the drill. One person starts inside, the other person, both people have a hand on the other lapel, and one person's job is to get the other person's ear to their chest, and the other person's job is to maintain the frame. People will get through that and learn how to do that very, very fast because it's not that big an adjustment. Like you'll get beaten the first couple of times and you'll eventually realize, oh, I need to place my elbow towards the ribs, or I need to get my hand out towards this particular part on the collarbone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can fast forward that. Whereas before I might have people drill something. An example of something similar that I do have to drill, and that is the catch sequence. And I have to drill the catch sequence because one is I have to impart the information that what I want people in RVR, LVL to get in the system of judo that I teach is to control the dominant hand of the other player. And they need that information and context. I can say in a game, your job is to go grab the dominant hand of the other player, and that will do really well. That will get a lot of work done. For the reason I just described, they will develop on their own a lot of ways to do that. However, there is an invariant in that sequence. In a catch sequence, I come out, I try to take the dominant hand, and then if I can't get it, particularly if I'm fighting an old school style Japanese gripper, which a lot of Americans are, they're going to try to throw their right hand at me and get it down my neck, down my back. I have to establish a frame, right on right, my left hand on their collar or in the armpit, in order to block part of the shoulder mechanism around the end of the collarbone. So that way I can prevent them from getting their right hand on the back of my neck. That is something that I actually will take the time to have them drill. I might even have them drill the first part where they're coming out to take the sleeve in different ways because they need to understand different ways to move, different ways to get it. And there are ways I can fast forward. Now, here's the thing, and this is the part that everyone is missing. Everybody. You go into the literature, and eco and constraints-led approach work better when I have an underlying foundation of movements that I know. If I give you the invariants, or at least several methods going in that you have some familiarity of how to do, it's like I gave you an initial map. I said, go explore that theme park, but here's where a couple paths are, and you'll go find the parts of the theme park you want to enjoy and have fun in. But you'll do that naturally, but you'll do it a little bit faster because you're coming in already with movements and shapes. So the answer is to combine schema theory, which is what classical skills development falls under, and combine ecological dynamics and nonlinear approaches. And they feed off of each other.
So let me say this, and we talked about this last night. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is relatively new in terms of sports science and sports development. They're kind of behind. One of our colleagues, he may or may not know anything about constraints-led approach and eco and somebody by the name of Colton Brown.
Yep.
Colton Brown's an excellent coach.
Excellent coach.
Excellent. And I work with him with the Bahamas Judo Federation. He's one of the consultants for the Bahamas Judo Federation as well. We talked about this, Chris, because judo and most sports have already gone through these arguments and this iteration. This is new for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes.
Judo, by default, by the way it is taught, already has this in it.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the late 1800s, when judo wasn't developed, in 1882, Dr. Kano created judo from jiu-jitsu by the inclusion of one portion, which is the what? The randori.
Yes.
The randori, the softness, the ability to play it does provide a game where you can do things and learn. That is what we would call, on our part, the whole.
Yes.
We look at the technique as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
We allow you to try it in randori as a whole. We
Mm-hmm.
sit back and see where it's failing or where the impedances are in the process. Either they are in the mind,
Mm-hmm.
in the brain, or there's some impedances in terms of movement in the body on from a biomechanical side, from a visual biomechanical analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And then we look at is that what's causing the technique to lack, or is it the person who's resisting? Is it a strength and conditioning issue? And then we break down the parts of it, we attend to it, we do some skill-based stuff, and then we go back into the whole environment. We do skill-based stuff and we do game-based, task-based to fix it. My thing that other thing that people really don't understand is that a lot of the eco stuff falls under the umbrella of the parts and the whole framework. We learn that we do the whole language approach. We ask Johnny to read the paper. Johnny can't read the paper. He's having a problem with certain words, certain symbolic words, certain
Mm-hmm.
sounds. We then go back to going over the words and the sounds. And then we
Mm-hmm.
send them back to the same article or the same paper and we have them read it again. These
Mm-hmm.
things are already in place in judo.
Yes. Where I think now, where I think that the one insight, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was young. Let's be very clear. And if you disagree with me on that, you are wrong. You are incorrect. Judo is, you can actually look at it. And this thought just occurred to me. This is in judo lore. There's this famous tournament. It was the tournament that determined which style of martial arts the Japanese military and police were going to learn. Judo wins this tournament. Well, judo, Dr. Kano removed all of these different things that you couldn't really do in a live training environment because someone would get badly hurt. In fact, one of the core reasons why heel hooks are not part of mainstream judo shiai is because if I tore my ACL in 1910, good luck. However, despite training under these constraints, they people representing judo were able to beat the other jiu-jitsu schools because they learned enough of what needed to be learned using this model that they could then adjust for things that were attacking them from outside of that model. This is the famous story around Yamarashi, and people can go look that up. Now, here's the thing. The insight I will say that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people have come up with that, I really like, is, okay, what traditionally, the way you and I would teach defensive Newaza would be, okay, one person starts on bottom, one person starts on top, person on bottom is learning how to play defensively, person on top is learning how to play offensively. We're going to learn. And then what will happen inevitably is the ever classic one person lies flat, they turtle up, and they stay there, and there is 2 minutes gone. That is useful to an extent because you have to learn how to break open a turtle, break open a flat position in competition. If you are a Newaza specialist, you have to, because it is a requirement. However, we also know that given enough time, someone will win in those positions, and people who are really good at exploiting those positions will win quickly. You will beat some random non-Newaza specialist by just covering up. But a true Newaza specialist will be able to find a way to open you up eventually. So I want to make sure I beat that Newaza specialist. I want to make it to the next round. So this is where the insight to give credit where credit is due is valuable, is where we traditionally would just say, go, one person are on top, one person are on bottom. In the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu space, what they're doing is saying, okay, one person's job here is to control the hands, is to catch the hands. One person's job here is to open the turtle up, is to break it into even smaller situational randori. And yes, situational sparring and task-based games are technically different things. I don't want to split hairs. But what can be brought in is a element of what are the concepts I'm trying to teach, and what is the behaviors I'm trying to incentivize? What I'm trying to incentivize for most of my athletes is to not just lie there on bottom. It's to learn how to intelligently defend yourself and potentially create a scoring opportunity by switching the position. And if I just say, go do randori, one person starts on top, one person starts on bottom, we get back into the monkeys and typewriters analogy.
Correct.
Now, what I personally do is I combine these two things by saying, all right, we're going to start person on top, person on bottom. Person on bottom's goal is to get on top. Person on top's goal is to isolate a limb. All right, good opening drill. Now we do that, and then we split off, and we go, all right, now you are going, for people on bottom, I'm going to teach you how to do a basic arm roll and how to do a basic duck out from wrestling. They get an opportunity to learn a couple pathways. Person on top, I'm going to teach you how to secure your hand initially on a choke or how to grab a wrist. Okay, now I've given them each a chance to work on that entry. We go back, we play the same game again. We will see improvement very quickly. Then the phase after that is we go back and go, okay, now I'm going to teach the clock choke, or I'm going to teach how to do a tie-up. Person on bottom, I'm going to teach how to Granby to guard, or I'm going to improve on that duck out, improve on that arm roll. And now we go back and we play the same game again, and then we can go into randori. And at that point, they have all the movement context and they have all the micro adjustments they have to make to enter into the technique, and they understand what the technique is useful for. Because here's the other trick with this. Straight deliberate practice, there's a great, everyone remember, Karate Kid and the guy wiping down the car, not understanding why am I wiping down this car? Well, if I give you the context for why you need to know a move, you'll be more interested in learning the move. If you're sitting there on bottom, you're like, how the hell do I get out from bottom? You'll be more receptive to the information when I go to teach you how to get out from bottom than if I simply said, all right, we're going to go over how to do an arm roll and open class with that. So that meets both goals. That meets the goal of providing the context, learning how to make micro adjustments, cutting the amount of time it takes to understand how to control the space and cover the space, say between your around your hips, or control your wrists or watch your neck. And also going ahead and saying, you're not going to figure out an arm roll on your own. So let me explain to you how to do it. And then you get that opportunity. And then, by the way, in the process of learning how to do that arm roll and learning the context of that arm roll, you'll learn how to do a wakigatami. You'll learn the next phases. So, rant finished.
All right. So the initial question that you said yes to was, is skill development best achieved through explicit instruction and repetition, or by allowing learners to self-organize solutions through real-world constraints? Which one is best for you?
For general population, I go through nonlinear because it will they get a chance to play quicker. For elite population,
hybrid.
It's hybrid.
Yeah, it's got to be hybrid.
It has to be hybrid. It's hybrid. It's not either or. And by the way, for that general population, eventually they're going to go, I really want to learn how to do Uchimata. I really want to do Yoko Tomoe. So in the end, it becomes hybrid for both.
Now, here's my, and I think we both agree with this. It just pisses me off when people come with this concrete, only this way approach.
Yes.
Because you and I, we had our hand in it, maybe even if it was like 2% of working with the only two-time Olympic champ ever.
Yes.
And you've seen her drilling.
Yep.
You watched a silver medalist drilling.
Yes.
You watched a two-time Olympic bronze medalist drill.
Yes.
You watched a 1999 world champion drill.
Yes.
Right. You drilled.
Yes.
Right. Drilling works. The efficacy of a drilling-based deliberate practice method is not questionable. Okay. Also, the efficacy of the CLA approach is not questionable either. The question is, will it work at the highest levels. That we just don't know yet. It doesn't mean that it can't. It just means we just don't know yet.
Well, I could actually argue that we saw this evolution in judo 50 years ago. Let's go. If you go pull up a match from the 1964 Olympics, people aren't grip fighting. People are still learning what the sport even is. And yeah, there were uchikomi, and yeah, there was drilling and stuff like that. But generally speaking, back then was a lot of randori. And then 1970s come around, and you start seeing, players learn how to grip fight and learn where to put their hands and move away from a throw first approach. And then we get in the 1980s, and actually you can trace this to the evolution of American judo. 1960s, everyone's just connecting and trying to throw each other. 1970s, that starts to change. You see the Cohens, you see Pedro Sr, you see folks start learning where I put my hands. And then in the 80s, you see Ed Liddy, you see...
And we see the hardcore evolution of Newaza in the 80s.
Yes.
They already did Newaza, but the Newaza never showed itself in competition until the 80s, Kashiwazaki.
Neil Adams.
Correct.
You have
Iskevich, these guys.
When you watch Neil Adams fight, you see Jimmy Pedro basically as a lefty Neil Adams 10 years later. Like, it's
correct, 100%.
So you have the sport evolves and techniques are learned and processes are learned, and there's a constant push-pull that occurs between linear and non-linear because they are both necessary. You have to have a hybrid approach, and you can get away with one or the other if the athlete population is poor.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Did you look at the 60s as being the non-linear approach?
To an extent, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was a randori-based method.
Mm-hmm.
There was some uchikomi there. Don't get me wrong. There was some drilling there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really based upon, we're doing randori.
Mm-hmm.
And then that, which is the whole.
Mm-hmm.
Then the people broke down the parts of that, and then they drilled the parts. And then I have no problem with this. And then they looked at those parts that were drilled and then created games for those parts.
Yeah. Look at Russian judo. Look at Russian judo. And actually, so here's the thing. There was a debate online about, who to learn throwing from and stuff like that. And people default to the Japanese. I'm going to say something somewhat controversial. If you want to learn how to get good at judo quickly, don't look at Japan.
No, that is the long-based, deliberate practice route.
Yep.
100%. It will, you may never get there being that.
Yeah, no, like if you want to be bored to tears, go to a high school Japanese judo practice after a tournament. You will do 2,000 uchikomis and you will be crying, and that's
3
fine.
Hours. The skin on your big toe, between your big toe and the ball of your foot, that little line there,
gone.
It will crack open, okay, and it will never heal while you're in Japan. You just have to tape and hope for no infection.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
And if the infection happens, who cares? You're still there.
You're still there. You gotta wait till you come home. Right, exactly.
Yeah, wait till you come home. Okay. Anyways, we can go over trauma another day.
Flashbacks of misery.
Yes. So what you actually want to watch is look at countries that have been successful in producing multiple medals during a singular time period, who do not have large bases of populations. So, you and I are both Americans. We're going to use the U.S. often as an example. You can look at what Pedro's did. You can look at what Cuba did. You could look at the smaller countries. Look at Kosovo.
The Cuban, when you say Cuba, you're talking about the Cuban that run during the Cuban women during the 90s.
Yes. You can look at that is one of the greatest historical runs.
That is what, man, let me tell you something. For people who want to understand the benefits of drilling and understanding micro drilling, like
Israel Hernandez.
Yep. Man.
Israel Hernandez.
Let me tell you something. Israel Hernandez is when you're talking about, like, okay, so you can, let's break for a moment, okay? You can take this games approach to Israel Hernandez, okay? And he is going to tell you to fuck off and go somewhere, okay? No, because Israel Hernandez is a technician. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, he may create games for you to do what the fuck I told you to do, but that's the game. The game is I told you to do this, and you better damn it do it. Like the way that he teaches judo is so
Precise.
and methodical. Like he's creating marksmen. I don't think you were there a couple years ago. He had some black kid from, I don't know, I think it was from California somewhere. I never saw him again. Israel trained him for like 6 months to a year. He beat the brakes off of everybody. Double sleeve, shake, shake, sode, drop sode, cross sleeve, like he looked like a master out there. But Israel understands how to break the game down into parts and then build the whole thing out again in a fashion and a form that I've never seen it. In my opinion, inside the United States, he's the best technician in the US. The best, in my opinion. And I put Swain at 2. Yes, but in my opinion. I don't know where we're going with that, but this is the podcast, so we're able to venture off a little bit.
Yes. So it's
okay. Hey, do me this. Let's go back here. We stopped in the 80s. Kashiwazaki in the 80s. What was the development of judo in the 90s? Go 90s, 2000, 2010, and then present.
Sure. So I argue that modern judo starts in the 1980s. Modern judo, you see gripping strategies are actually still relevant today. You see complete judoka more often. Your Neil Adams, your Redleys. You have people who can both operate in groundwork and on the feet. And then you get in the 1990s. And once again, let's look at teams that do not have massive state funded backing and do not have a massive cultural element to them. You start to see, or even we can even include some of those. You start to see
like
things
Brazil. You can't keep Brazil because Brazil comes through in the 80s with Aurelio Miguel. This is when hardcore grip fighting, hardcore tactician.
Doesn't win a match with a throw and wins an Olympic.
Didn't win a match and didn't win a match with a throw in the Olympics. This is when you see the strength and conditioning, the cardiovascular conditioning, and then I've talked to Flavio about him. Aurelio Miguel had superb groundwork. He just never showed it. Flavio learned a lot from Aurelio Miguel and being in those environments because he was a young pup when he was around. Then we see Brazil now with the inclusion of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the Flavio Canto come through. And then we see the overall development of Newaza in the 90s to the 2000s.
And here's the other thing.
With transitions. You see a refinement of Neil Adams. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And gripping continues to improve. So here's the insight for folks like Neil Adams and Jim Pedro Sr., folks who figure out gripping already. It was the ability to stop the match from getting to places you didn't want to go. It was the ability to decide to go back to Sun Tzu and decide what is the battlefield we are going to fight on. It was the ability to actually play the art, actually go ahead and paint in the art of war. So this continues to improve. Effectively what we see that comes to promise in the 90s now is a further refinement of that. Now, interesting things pop up. So 2000s, I argue, by the time we get into 2000s, the biggest changes happen because of rule changes. Effectively, we are at modern judo in 1995. One of the best examples of that is Jamal Boras versus Tashiko Koga in the finals of 96, where you see Boras pull off the upset, Frenchman, because he just does not let Koga ever get to the position he desires.
Exactly. He never lets him get that hand on.
Never happens. So now the big changes happen because of rule changes. So in 2009, we have the announcement that you can only grab a leg as part of a counter or as part of a continuation. In 2013, we can't grab a leg at all.
Let's say this. So let me insert myself into this discussion. I never make the Olympic team 96. I don't make it in 2000. Okay, I didn't make it in 2000. And the likelihood of me making it in 2008 and 2012 is low. I came in 2004 when we were at the end of that 1996 movement. 2004 was the last stop on that movement.
Mm-hmm.
I come out of school at that time playing football, playing fullback, coming off the line, running into linebackers, doing enough deliberate practice of just running linearly into somebody and tackling them to the point where a move, Morote Gori works superb during that time.
Mm-hmm.
I learned, because the game had changed, how to shut the rest of the game down defensively through grip fighting. I then learned what I need in order to win this game through best practices model. I needed good what? Newaza. Got
Mm-hmm.
in touch with Lord. I learned how to defend everything. I was a minimalist on the technical side at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Maximize the defense, and I came through at the sweet spot time wise that allowed me to get away. Let's just call it what it is, with some of the bullshit that they stopped in 2008 and beyond.
Yes. So, you know, what we see is a resurgence of things can be full circle. At the end of the day, we're always trying to exploit whatever people are weak on. And we see a resurgence in the mid 2000s of a more throwing based judo, in my opinion, because of the rule changes. So the
When you mid, you mean post 2004?
Post 2000, actually, I mean post 2010.
Okay.
Because when I remove leg grabs in that way, you still see a lot of big. I love the one.
You love the Taraji match, right?
Yeah, but the 2016 and even parts of the Tokyo games, we now have all the grip. We have gripping. We have all these elements, but the gripping was more restrictive in the Rio run. I can't. It's hard for me to 2-on-1 grip break. Yeah, I can't. There's a lot of other elements in play because they're trying to get people to just stay in the pocket and throw each other.
Correct, because it looks good for TV.
Yes. But Newaza at this point has greatly improved. We have multiple great Newaza masters on the mat at any given time in any given division. You know, you have Travis Stevens, Kaori Matsumoto. You have Flavio Kanto was still around the London quad. You have a lot of great Newaza players.
You have the Newaza Huntress. I forget what her name is. From Japan, 52 or 57 kilos.
57 kilo Matsumoto.
Yes.
And by the way, you can see a direct line and influence from Kashiwazaki in the 80s into the Japanese women's team.
100%.
Because Kashiwazaki was at Budo, did a lot of work with the women's team, Budo University. So you can watch and follow all of these things. I saw another podcast talked about the idea that, you know, when you jump into judo, you jump into all of these storylines that have been ongoing for 100 years. But you can trace that. So now we get to Paris, and Paris is tactics were always a part of all of this. Tactical judo has always been a part of all of this, but I think we get to, for better or worse, the penultimate version of the Shido game of winning on penalties. And not that winning on penalties wasn't a thing. It had been a thing for years, been a key element of the game for many years. But the penultimate theatrics of creating a penalty happened at the Paris Olympics. So now what we're seeing in the recent rule changes has been an attempt to take that part of gamesmanship and adjust it to create, because they always want people to win by scores. So effectively, we started off with a randori-based method where people were just coming in as like two action figures hitting each other in the 60s. In the 70s, we start to see people understanding position and the value of position. In the 80s, we see the advent of modern grip fighting and modern Newaza. Many of the pioneers of that era become critical for the people who immediately follow in the 90s, who become critical for the people who end up coming to field in the 2010s.
So let me add this part in it too. I mean, just so people get a good understanding of the total narrative, and they understand the storylines that you spoke of. In the 90s is when we saw the inclusion of the coach as a caricature or as an environmental fabricator on the match.
Yes.
From Betia. This is the initial part when he was the person who kind of created the storyline that we talked about in 2016 of the utilization of the Shido by the practitioner or the coach to influence the match. With the IGF, did is they was like, we got to take that power out of the coach's hands. They removed the coach and the input of the coach. They brought in the referee table so that the referee can now influence the match on how it needs to go and how it needs to look for the purpose of television and for the purpose of creating big throws for the crowd.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make sure that people understand that part too. But as coaches, it's our job to utilize the Cheetos that are on the table as chips to create influence for the other player.
And understanding all of this, so let's get back to the original point of conversation. The IGF and how they develop tournaments is using an ecological approach to get a desired result.
It's a C. That's what I said. Every competition is a CLA. They're trying to find the what IGF wants in terms of outcome. They want excitement. They're in the ticket sales business.
Yes.
Their job is to create excitement. We need big throws in the first 2 or 3 rounds because we know when we get to the finals, the game's going to be really what? It's going to be really tight. It's going to be really tight because they created the CLA. The CLA for people who aren't developed creates a huge delta. The CLA for people who are developed creates a really, really tight game. It's a constraints-led approach because there's no leg grabs. There's certain things you can't do with the grips. So they created a situation where their desired outcome is highlight reels, ticket sales.
Yeah.
As a coach, our desired outcome is we need to be in the finals.
Yep. So this brings to another element, and this is where eco, in my opinion, is very, very good at teaching those elements. I can say, all right, or constraint sled, I can say, all right, you're starting up, you have 2 Cheetos on the board against you, you're up by Wazari, finish the round. I'm putting 2 minutes on the clock, finish this out.
So the argument for that is that a wrestling coach is listening to this, or a football coach is listening to this, and they said that's just situationals.
Yeah, it's just situationals. So this is where I would differ from situational, because that is just situational like that, and that's the thing. A lot of people conflate the two. What I might do is say, okay, your task to maintain that is I need you to get to double lapel and stay there. And we're going to start from a neutral position. And I'm going to create a game where your goal is, and this is the context, you have to get to double lapel and stay there. I'm going to open the game up enough that you can do other things. If you need to drop, you can drop, but it better be a good drop because otherwise that third penalty is coming. This is another element that I think, because I think people can get confused on. Also, what we're trying to do with task-based games, we're trying to create enough of a sense of fun that we can reduce the number of repetitions we have to do. But also, some games just aren't going to be fun, and we're just going to have to do repetition. Like, I'm sorry, if I can find someone who just simply finds it fun to I'll give you an example of a move that's not fun to drill. A power half is not inherently fun to drill. It is not. Not for top, not for bottom. Top person, the first few times they're doing it, they're a little worried they might dislocate their partner's shoulder. There's some precision to it. Bottom person doesn't want their shoulder dislocated, and also there's now a forearm in the back of their neck, and it fucking hurts. I can't fund my way out of that. And a lot of Newaza, to do Newaza well, is stuff like start with a wrist. Now, a game that can teach you a game that can teach you what I would normally have you do a spin drill for is, okay, one person starts on top of turtle. Their job is to keep their chest connected to the person on bottom. That will teach them pressure. Because the person on bottom might try to stand up. They have to keep them down. Person on bottom might try to flip over. They have to follow them. It will teach them pressure, and they will have a more fun doing that than just a simple spin drill. Now, spin drill still is useful. In fact, there have been times when I realized people just were not getting what they needed out of the game. So, you know what? Spin drill time. And man, wrestling coaches, I hate that drill. It's not that I hate that drill as a tool. It is a good tool. I hate that drill as a person who had to do that drill.
Yes, over and over again.
Yeah. So and this gets to another point. There are different kinds of learners, and I am someone who is a beneficiary of special education because I'm autistic. And I have a PhD. It was not because I wasn't smart enough. I just needed a different set of teaching methods to get to where I needed to go. So a pure eco approach is highly beneficial for tactile learners, but not everybody's a tactile learner. You need, I remember sitting in the room with you in 2009, gonna age both of us. I was in college, and we have a whiteboard out, and we're talking about bullets and guns and platforms, and all right, if each throws a bullet, then each grips a gun, and then positions are all that kind of stuff, and talk about where that stuff's at. And I had done, for example, the sumi lat position a million times, and that's one of my best positions. But simply being told, hey, if that foot, because I was having trouble with people getting their foot in front of me and coming across one-handed taio, if I missed the cut step, simply going, hey, foot sweep that foot if it comes in front. Simple enough, simple fix. I, despite having spent years in that position, had not found that solution. So spending 10 minutes drilling that changed that position for me, made it a much more sound position. So that's the other thing that where deliberate practice is important, is deliberate practice allows you to access things for audio and visual learners and shortcut things, and also provide insights that they are not picking up on their own, because we cannot rely on monkeys to type the Iliad with typewriters.
Israel Hernandez and I used to say this. He said, los ojos solo pueden ver que su cerebro pueden entender. Meaning, the eyes can only see what the brain can comprehend. Mm-hmm. Meaning, you can be inside of an environment and look as much as you like, but if a microscope is needed to see the changes, you can't see them. And if a binocular is needed to see the changes, you can't see them. And if a telescope is needed to see them, you can't see them. Mm-hmm. You can only see what you have the ability to see. Mm-hmm. So I can put you in an environment and you can roll as much as you like. Your ability to figure that out through a solutions-based approach, okay? Mm-hmm. From a self-awareness solution-based approach is only as good as your ability to find solutions. Meaning, everybody who graduates high school is not going to leave high school having done calculus. Some people are going to graduate with just geometry. Some people are going to graduate just with algebra 2. Their ability to do the math is just very different. Which then means in an ecological approach, the top person in that room is only as good as the absolute value of the what? Of the room.
And here's the thing, here's where people also aren't getting at. It's actually easier to design a deliberate practice program long term. It's not easy on the elite level at all, but it's easier for me to say, here's a system of moves. You're going to go learn that system of moves, and we're going to go from there and do Randori and call it a day. Eco is a set of techniques to do them at a high level that requires that you're able to see the matrix, and you have to have a deep understanding of grappling to do it right. Mm-hmm. Because if you do not, you are going to miss areas, and you're going to
100%.
Go ahead.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'll give you an example. I had a couple players last year that joined my team. They were distance folks. One had not medaled at a major tournament on the national level in about 2 years. They had a lot of moves, but didn't know where to put them. Mm-hmm. And I had another player who was relatively new to the sport, had a lot of base athleticism, but had done a lot of repetition, but needed more organization. I was able to use Eco to organize their games, and I got them both to the finals of several major tournaments last year. However, they coming in already had shapes and movements they could use that were effective in the Eco format. Now, I have a kid right now, young, let's be clear, junior development is different than senior development. I have a junior right now who has been primarily Eco, does very, very well in the national level, has no training partners her size. But now I'm in the space where Friday night I have a scheduled practice where she's doing shape development. because she
Now,
needs.
explain shape development, please, for those who listen.
So
I know you covered it earlier, but you kind of ran through it. Just kind of explain it for the people.
Sure. So this is a concept I originally got from Ryan Hall. We talked about the idea that I am making a technique is just a shape I'm making with my body, and I understand the context in which to use it. So an Uchimata is the shape of effectively a single leg RDL. So a Yoko Tomoe is its own shape. At the end of the day, grappling is finite. People talk about grappling as infinite. It's not infinite. It's only infinite in the theoretical mathematical space. It's not infinite at all. I cannot conveniently hit an ankle lock from a body lock without going through 7 steps to actually, not exactly, so going through several steps to get back to that ankle lock. And on top of it, it doesn't even necessarily make sense to do that because I'm giving up position. So within the game itself, there are incentives, there is body position, all of that. So when I talk about shape development, when we're talking about building a technique, that's what we're actually talking about is, can I get my body to make that shape or get that athlete to make that shape? And can I get them to make it at the right time? And a lot of shapes are inherently complex in judo because I have balance in play. I have gross motor coordination requirements that are not in play when I'm playing a game off of my back or with one knee up and one knee down. I have, or my partner's on their back. And each limb is doing something different. So I did occupational therapy as a kid. Occupational therapy is a lot of things of like one arm's doing one thing, the other arm's doing something else, while the foot's doing something else. Like it's a lot of elements of getting your brain to be able to make every limb do something slightly different. It has a lot of different impacts, and I'm sure some occupational therapists who's going to be in the comment section explain that a little better than me. But judo, because of the different gross motor requirements and having each limb play a different role, you have to invest time into shape. The invariants are not just invariant because an Uchimata at the end of the day kind of looks roughly the same in terms of shape-wise between Inoue, Ono, Maruyama, and Rhadi Ferguson Jr. It's also an invariant because it's hard to create on your own consistently, so you have to spend some time drilling it.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can find a circular type of shape, but even in finding that with the broad strokes, there's still not enough. There's not enough reps. There's not enough myelination. The neural pathway hasn't been ingrained to the point where you can call for that move and have it done. That's another thing from the judo standpoint. Like you have to ask for a move. And then the move needs to be done. If there's no name for it or no nomenclature or nobody, and you're just figuring out on your own, we don't have a name for the thing that you need to do at the time you need to do it.
And I can do things like I can call for concepts. I can say, hey, keep that, hey, first on the grip, which is a drill I do with people, or hey, keep them off of your hips. That is another game we can play. But also at the end of the day, hey, stop hitting Uchimata, which by the way, technically you're supposed to use a different way, say that a different way in coaching, but like, hey, stop attacking. Okay, that's a concept. But hey, hook, I need you to do ouchi, which is short form for, hey, I need you to hook your leg to the inside. I need to hook your lead leg to the inside of their support leg. I could say all of that, and in an eco situation, like that's what I might say in practice and to explain a drill. But I have 10 seconds max to say something in a black belt match at the world level because I am not allowed to talk during the action. And the average length of time for a mate pause across every age group, and I know this because I've done the data analytics, is 8 to 10 seconds. Because guess what? One of the things that really helps to figure out whether or not something needs to be drilled or something needs to be ecoed is doing data analytics and seeing what isn't working.
So case in point, all right, and we've done this before. You have to drill this following movement. Mate. Mate. Where when Mate is called on the mat,
they look at you.
Before they get up, because we have to maximize that information landscape that we have. As soon as the ref says, Mate, look, get the information and start making your way to, and start making your way to stand up. Because now you don't have to walk the line. As soon as you stand up and you turn towards the opponent, Hajime, that part has to be drilled. There's no way around it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no. Now, can we create a game? Yeah, we can create a game where everybody's moving around and I say, Mate, boom, and everybody looks. Yeah, that's a cool game. But the bottom line is you got to drill that. You got to drill that into the person's head over and over again. I need to move to the next step in this discussion, Chris.
Yep.
If you don't mind me moving through the information here.
Oh, absolutely.
So the other argument we have is we talked about this last night, the ideal technique versus adaptive problem solving. Now, the drilling perspective is there are technical ideals, okay, and the best way to execute a skill that should be taught, refined, and mastered. The eco CLA perspective is there's no single ideal way to perform a skill. Movement solutions should be adaptable and context dependent. The argument is, should learners be taught a gold standard for a technique, or should they be encouraged to find solutions that work best for them in different scenarios? Now, I need to refine this, otherwise we'll be here all day, so I'm going to have to give you the population. Should elite level learners be taught a gold standard for technique, or should they be encouraged to find solutions that work best for them in different scenarios?
They should have earlier in their development received an introduction to what looks like a gold standard technique, at which point they are allowed to refine. But that refinement should occur under the guise of a coach who's looking and watching for potential issues. Because at the end of the day, here's the part that a lot of people are missing. I have created the version of Uchimata that Rhadi Jr. is doing, or that Lorne or Sarah or whoever else is doing through a drawing practice, because I've given them a game of your job is to complete this throw in the most efficient way possible. The less weight you feel when you're doing this throw during this drill, the better the technique is.
The better it is.
So this is a case where these are the same, honestly, because the game when you're drilling a throw is to do it where I don't feel their weight. That's the thing. People talk about trying to power through shit. The game, when I'm developing technical aptitude, is to not have to do that, because if I have to power through every throw through 6 matches, I'm not going to make it through 6 matches.
Right. So let me say this, and you made this point. If I have the Japanese national team inside of my dojo and I'm coaching them, I can do eco all day long.
Yeah.
I don't teach you anything. Now, the people who come to us, so they come to your program masters, what happens is their ideal is not the ideal. It's not the right ideal.
And
go ahead.
And what might be ideal for them may be different. You may need to spend time doing eco to figure out what is the ideal form for them. Or you may have to...
Or this happens, and you've seen this before at Jimmy's place. You got to everything that they learned is not applicable for what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, you have to throw their judo game in the trash and restart them.
You got to restart them now, and when you restart them, now you got to restart them, which is what we do. We got to restart them looking at the chronological landscape. How much time do we have? What's the goal? What's the objective for the parents? What do they want to accomplish? And then we have to include the great mind fuck, because now I still got a kid. They still need to win some shit. I got to figure out, do I use eco here and then back off and go skills here? Use eco. I got to figure out what I need to do in order to get the final product or the outcome that we need. Because the outcome that we need may be 2032, 2036, 2040. That may be the goal. And it might be, we can't lose this kid now, because when this kid hits 16 and hormones start raging and they start getting involved with the opposite sex, and the high school coaches starts pulling them for soccer, for football, for track, and we got to make sure they are interested in judo enough to stay.
Yes,
right.
And here's the thing. If I were to talk chronological landscape real quick, All right. I'm prepping you for senior nationals. Well, as we get closer to senior nationals, because I need them to be in the physical condition they need to be in to compete, I will back off of broad general drilling because I need them to have the cardiovascular capacity to do that. I may have a practice where they're doing more technical work. That's appropriate for technical practices. But I effectively, a lot of my practices are a series of eco drills leading into full randori. Because it allows me to do what would have otherwise been 90 minutes of randori, which would likely increase likelihood of injury and not actually necessarily be that good for skill development. By the way, one of the interesting things that happens is when I do this with black belts who have not been through this and maybe have had incomplete judo educations, they get really upset because when you do this eco approach, you will run into a phase that they got away with not learning.
Correct.
And they will get very frustrated. And by the way, I've experienced that in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu side because I train in a place that does a lot of eco stuff. And it's not that I don't know what to do in certain positions. It's just that I built a game around avoiding them completely.
Exactly, because we did judo, right? So our job was to make sure that you never enter into that space.
So people will there's an element where when you're doing this, if I try to run an eco practice, which by the way is very good from a cardiovascular and aerobic conditioning standpoint.
Correct.
Sometimes people be like, I'm not working on it. Like, no, you are. You're working on a lot of stuff. It's that I'm also putting you in this is where eco and deliberate come together. I'm also putting you in the space that you are not good at and that you have to know enough to navigate from. And a lot of deliberate practice is fucking misery because we are working on things we are not inherently good at and we are trying to iron them out. And this is where these two come together. At the end of the day, these are not exclusive approaches. And we also, and this is one of the points I need to bring up, and I'll be very quick on this, is we need to understand where the people who are espousing these different ideals are coming from. This is a political dynamics element. This is political science. You cannot understand, for example, to pull out into political thinking, you cannot understand the work of Edmund Burke without understanding the French Revolution. You cannot understand the work of John Rawls without understanding the New Deal in the 1930s. You need to understand the context people are working in. When I look at, and I'm open to him telling me I'm wrong, when I look at someone like a Greg Souders, the drilling approach had been the dominant approach in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 10, 15 years. We have Drill to Win by Andre Galvão coming out in 2012? That had been the dominant approach. The deliberate practice was the dominant approach, and some people had taken that too far. So now we're seeing the pendulum swing the other end, and when the pendulum needs to be sitting roughly somewhere in the middle, and you move in one direction depending on what people need.
And to your point, contextually, and we talked about this last night, contextually. Now, I came up in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from one of the hardest drillers known to man, Lord Irvin. And I'm telling you, he has a separate room downstairs. Dojo's upstairs. There's another room downstairs. We spent in the summer. You would wake up in the morning and you would drill. When I mean all day, I'm talking about 8 to 12. There's a lunch place downstairs. You go have lunch. You come back and you continue to drill the same move over and over again for hours. Ryan Hall, when he developed the triangle, Ryan Hall was drilling for hours and hours and hours. Now, contextually, and I said this in a recent podcast that I had with Coach Bren, Greg Souders' model, the one that he espouses and uses, the CLA constraint, the game, that works great, no gi. I can't even argue the point. It works, it's fabulous. No gi has made up moves, made up rules, they don't, you don't have to know what the hell Niju Garami is. It's made up. It's a truck position, it's a half this, it's a mermaid guard, Z guard, coyote guard, the wolf, the handstand press to the side, whatever it is. I mean, it's all made up. There's no kata, there's no forms, there's no ideal, there's nothing. And what happens is you'll find out over a period of time, no gi will move itself. It'll splinter. It'll become a wrestling heavy approach, or become a butt scooting heavy approach. And neither one of them is going to be able to sustain itself for a long period of time without any standard nomenclature. The thing that allows judo to have the staying power that it does is judo has a root to it. Our kata provides us with a root. We don't eliminate the drilling because the drilling provides the kata. We also never say that this method of training isn't useful because all methods of training are good for what they're good for. There are some people who want to learn judo just to learn the art of judo. Drill and you can get a black belt and you never have to fight what? Anybody. You never have to fight a Shiai. You can also get a black belt by not drilling, okay, or drilling minimally, doing the eco approach and just fighting your way through to the black belt. And you can learn it that way.
A lot of old instructors did that. A lot of old
Many of them.
Yeah, you look at instructors. There are tons of instructors in the United States who've run successful programs. You have you have tons of instructors who've done that kind of thing, and and that's fine too. And it's now where I will call out, and I will, because I can't not call this out, what the idealized version of a technique is up for debate. I argue that a lot of what people have to do in terms of like the Nage no Kata version, we see again and again, doesn't actually show up in competition. We don't. It does not. Let's be very clear. I think some of the point that the eco folks will have, and I count myself among them, but one of the points that my colleague, I'm in favor of a hybrid approach. I work in both realms. One of the key points is that the idealized version that a lot of people think is the idealized version is not. And you can find that idealized version sometimes very quickly doing eco. And so the reps on the idealized version are higher for one person than someone who is doing a more theoretical version. So the eco person goes further ahead. So what you have to actually do is study and figure out what is the actually quote unquote idealized version. And the idealized version, we're not talking about idealized version. People are making mistakes. They're thinking, well, I'm trying to make Ichimai look like Inoue. No, I'm not. I'm trying to take a series of mechanisms and a series of shapes that I'm making with each limb and make sure I can recreate the mechanism.
Because if it's not recreatable, it's not scientific.
Yeah. And if I understand the mechanism for each throw and how to create the mechanism, because that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about my Uchimata looking like Inoue's. It's never, my Uchimata will never look like Inoue's. It'll never look like Shoyona's. But can I recreate the same mechanism and create that mechanism consistently? That is what drilling is trying to do. I'm trying to learn how to recreate a mechanism repeatedly. That's all I'm trying to do. I use Uchimata as an example because the shape is very easy to create and people think it's harder than it is.
I think the guy's name is Dr. Mike. That's the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. Yes. Mm-hmm. He was making a great argument that sometimes it is good to see the thing first. Like if you show somebody a video and you said, listen, you might not be able to throw like this, but here he's using his hip as a fulcrum. Kid may say, what's a fulcrum? And you explain what a fulcrum is. You may have to get out of shape and a stick. And so you can teach people, because some people are going to be visual learners like this. Mm-hmm. All of them aren't going to be tactile. They may need to see the thing and be incentivized from watching it on videos. You know what? I see how that works. I can do it like that. Or they can see the pulling hand, or they can see the hip, or they can see the leg, or they can say, you can say, you know what? Screw it. This is just Zempo Kaiten no Kemi with a person on your back. Really? Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, just do Zempo Kaiten no Kemi. Just do
a rolling ukemi with a person attached to your back. Congratulations.
Got it. And that's not exactly what it is, but that's a broad brush stroke of what it looks like. And it takes the whole Uchimata thing out of it for them.
And we can refine, and then I mean let's bring this all together. If I am creating a curriculum, mm-hmm. which I have, And you can purchase a version of the curriculum to support my nonprofit.
Where do they go for that? Where do they go for that?
They can go to martialartsforsocialgood.org and send us an email, and you can access that. We are
send the subject line curriculum.
Subject line curriculum. The other subject line I'll accept is I'm making a large donation on a monthly basis. I'll answer that, or I will take annual basis. I will take any basis, but generally speaking, if you just simply send me an email saying I'm willing to make a $10,000 donation, I'll give you whatever you want. But the nonetheless, what you do, it's simple as this. You go, what are the things I'm trying to teach and what are the requirements I need at the end if someone wants a black belt? And if someone, and what are the requirements of the program? The goal of the program is to get a kid to do judo from age of 5 to 12. Well, and truthfully, you just split that age group up a bit more because 9 to 12 is very different than 5 to 8. But you go, okay, they need to be able to, an elite judo player only actually usually has 5 to 12 throws max. And I mean, in terms of actual scoring, it's like 4.
3 to 5, yep.
4 or 5 scoring throws, and the rest are auxiliary things that are there as movements to
move you into the 3 to 5 that I do.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, then skills is pretty straightforward. I just need to learn how to do those 4 to 5 scoring throws from different positions. I need to spend time learning how to get to those positions. And actually, it's actually not that hard to create a base for somebody in that circumstance. Now, if I won't have a general practitioner, I know a lot more. But anyways, the point is, if I'm creating a curriculum, I use eco so that people understand the context of each position, how to get to the moves, and then the moves that are more complex we drill, and the moves that I can initially learn through eco, we refine utilizing deliberate practice. The example I like to use and explain to people is I had 2 phases when I learned how to do a power clean. I learned how to do a power clean initially. I got a lifting program from my coach. I had not been taught how to do a power clean, but I looked up how to do a power clean watching Olympic lifting. So I watched it, was like, okay, this is what that roughly looks like. And I did my best to recreate that. I then went to go work with my first long-term strength and conditioning coach, Paul Susi, about a year after that. And then Paul saw what I was doing, took the weight off the bar, and said, okay, I'm going to work with you to refine that technique so you can do it safer and we can go further faster. So I did that. And then lo and behold, my power clean went up about 60 pounds within a few months because I was doing the technique properly and not blowing my back out. Now, did I need to get that type of technical weightlifting instruction to do a bench press? Not particularly. It helped. But I was able to get away. But learning how to push, I was able to go ahead and move. And by the way, I'm not an S&C coach. I'm just using this as quick and easy examples. But the power clean is a much more intense gross motor exercise than a bench press in terms of the number of moving parts and the mechanisms in play. So,
100%.
What's up?
I said 100%.
So if I'm going to go ahead and develop my curriculum, I go, what's complex, what isn't, what do I need to actually spend time working on and developing? I spend the time on that, and the rest of it, I can create a sense of play to get the intros to it. And then I can, the people who want the extra stuff, who want the refined Ouchigari, who want the refined Osotogari, that is bonus sessions as private lessons. That is, it's a Tuesday and everyone's beat up from Randori and doing eco stuff. So we're going to slow things down. So
got it. All right, let's move to the next one. And then we're gonna stop on this one after this last one and close out, and then we'll have to have a part 2. All right, let's go over the you know what I wanna.
I know I'm digressing a lot.
No. This is good. I just want to know which I'm just looking at which one I want to handle, and I'm gonna go with this one first. The cognitive load and decision making. All right. The drilling perspective, okay, reducing cognitive load by isolating specific movements and removing external variables, allowing for technical refinement before adding complexity. The eco CLA perspective, decision making is part of the skill itself. And removing it from the learning process creates athletes who struggle in real world scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Argument: should learners master mechanics first before adding complexity? Or should decision making and adaptability be built into training from the beginning?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah, man.
And I'm going to once again take the coward's way out and say yes. No, I'm kidding. I think you have to start with, I think you can start with a simple game if you want to go the eco route and do something very simple, but you need to provide the solution, and they need to drill the solution. So I have a young man who drilled everything into a complex system, but would freeze. Exactly what eco proponents warn about. But once I got him to overcome
Speak to freezing. How did he freeze? What do you mean when he froze?
He had drilled everything for each position, but he couldn't remember quick enough in the moment when to hit certain things. He was overwhelmed by the amount of information presented, and he was not moving quick enough cognitively to make those adjustments.
Did you beat him?
I did not.
See, that's where you. I'm sorry, ladies. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry about that. Here we go.
So, what I went back and did, and what I've tried to do with them, and I've done this with others, is I said, okay, we're going to make these. You know all these moves. We're going to give you smaller tasks so that way you're just thinking about the task or the concept at the time, and then these moves will fall in. If I know what my objective is in each position, then things will fall into place. I'll get better at playing that position. But I have to be told what my objective is in that position. I have to be taught what the objective is in that position.
So I talked about this. For me, that still falls under the drill-based framework where we're looking at what the impedances are. We're doing the whole, and we look at where the impedances are, and then we fix those things, and then we go back to the whole. Coach Bren would say that's still the drill-based approach, and he would argue that that would never happen if you started with the eco approach.
Yeah, so here's the problem. I have the other end of that too. And guess what? They will find the right route. Not right. Let me rephrase it. They will find a route, but I want to say be the most efficient route. And left eco or just straight randori alone, they will miss things because they did not have the opportunity to discover and exploit those.
That will not work when they're moved to a higher level room.
Yeah, so they will. I'll give you an example. I can have a player learn how to do Ochi, Kochi, and Shimada, and I'm harping a lot on Shimada, but I can do Ochi, Kochi, and Shimada. That will work up to a point to just have those movements and have a base level of gripping that they picked up through eco and position. They will do well, but at some point they have to learn how to do a switch, and they have to learn how to do either a Yoko Tomoe or some kind of level change. And you have to be taught how to do those. And you are going, let me rephrase this. I'm just speaking personal experience. And with my sample size of my club, I have seen people from both a predominantly eco perspective and a predominantly perspective get lost and be stuck and have questions about what the fuck to do. It's who is this person? What is the skill set they're coming from? And everyone ends up running into being stumped by certain questions and need help and need to work on the thing and to do that.
And then it goes back to the coach.
Yes.
And if the coach does not have the background or perspective from having both approaches, they're going to have blind spots.
Mm-hmm. We had this. There's two athletes I work with that we had this conversation with. Victoria Abdekimov, young kid. Victoria is predominantly eco. She knows where to put her hands. She knows how to bother the base. She does a lot of things. We got a lot of mileage out of that with her. Once again, young kid. We have Chloe Williams. Chloe Williams, I initially tried to just eco with, like I had done with Victoria. It did not work. I had to take time to go over the shape and drill the shape, and now we're in a much better space because of that. And Chloe Williams is competitive, so being is very competitive on the senior level. Some people will do better on one than the other. And by the way, Victoria, I still had to go, and there was still something I found that we had to drill. We had to work on a particular grip sequence because she could not, with simply the instruction to do it, under an eco approach, do the task I needed her to do. So I had to drill that and then return to task-based learning.
All right. Then you have Rhadi.
Mm-hmm.
Rhadi is all drill-based.
All drill-based.
All drill-based and successful.
Very successful.
However, there are, when it comes to movement patterns, putting 2-3 attacks together at a time, not just one hit or quitter attack, but setting up a Sasai to Osoto, being able to go Sasai, Osoto, Kosoto, being able to utilize Ouchi to move to Osoto, like those particular things, she doesn't do well. And the eco drills that you gave me specifically for basically her and the other people in the dojo, but they're really for her, they've been helpful and ingraining not the patterns of the move, but ingraining the understanding that these moves don't work in isolation. Right.
And here's the thing people are missing. The eco people are right when they say, hey, this can't be entirely prescriptive, because there are a lot of coaches that will try to put their game on top of somebody. And people have to be given the space to find the game that works for them. You and I had this debate. When we were doing the Masters Fellows, and we were going to throw together a playbook and say, all right, we're just going to have a straight game plan for every single person, regardless of who's in the chair. And that wasn't working because the players were all too different. Now, some of this also led to us saying, okay, we can't continue to work with that player because they're not going to fit within the system or some other element.
Now, let me be clear. This came from my 2004-2008 bias, where the game was such that you didn't necessarily. It didn't matter if you were lightweight or heavyweight. The game was created in such a way that if you played the game like this, which Nathan figured out, if you played the game like this, you could win. When the rules change and things change, and every judo coach, okay, has to constantly adapt because of the application of the rules and the change of the rules. Every 4 years, the rules change, and then they adapt through the tournament process before the new rules come out the next time. So you're constantly watching judo matches the whole time, or you're gonna get left behind. And the difficulty is sometimes the referees inside the United States aren't doing the same things that the international refs are doing, and you're prepping your student for an international game, and then you get to the game.
There's an even funnier version of that, where like sometimes when I'm counter coaching, I can tell based on the advice I'm hearing what quad they stopped in.
Correct. Exactly. Yes. Exactly. 100%.
Yeah. 100%. And then I know what quad they stopped in. So
the weakness.
That match, but the next match my player deals with someone from their club, I know what to call for, because I remember what was in vogue for each era.
Correct. Which is, now I have a dojo full of hardcore gripper pushers, where pushing somebody out of bounds is not a penalty anymore.
Nope.
Right. So and you notice this from coaching Rufus, there's some changes that have to occur with Rufus and Rhadi in terms of becoming more circular in your movements, because those things it's just a waste of energy. You know, there are some, and the reason we're going back to the reason why you got to use two approaches, because certain things have to be fixed with each approach, and just saying screwdriver for everything, when you need a hammer for some things, or you need a Phillips head instead of a flathead, it's just not going to work.
Look, at the end of the day, these approaches are tools. They're tools in the toolbox. No, being a good coach is knowing when they're useful and when they're not. being an excellent coach is understanding when neither is useful and you have to do something else. And being a good consumer of all of this material is understanding that at the end of the day, each coach is also trying to proclaim their niche and where they're at. And really good coaches will use whatever the necessary tool is to get someone better. A hybrid approach embraces that philosophy. It is better to be because one, it allows you to work with a wider variety of players, which means a wider variety of information coming into you so that you continue to learn and develop. And it also allows you to approach with an open mind. Everyone, particularly in judo coaching, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coaching, actually don't experience it as much, but judo coaching, I see it all the time where someone stopped learning judo in 1991 or 1998 or in 2014 or in 1976 or 1882, which if that there's a joke there I had and I lost. But the general point is that if you're prepping people for international competition, local tournaments, who cares? Or just having a general local dojo. But international competition, there's a constant upgrading process. And the way you're going to be able to help athletes adapt for each thing is going to be dependent on the athlete. And there are ways to fast forward. I just had this conversation with Justin Flores. Justin Flores and I had a great conversation about this a few weeks ago. Because I was talking to him about the idea of I am really putting in effort to see, because we have a short time frame, like 4 years seems long. An Olympic quad is actually very short. You get 18 months to develop shit. 18 months to make sure that
it's over.
It's over. And by the way, it is March of 2025. I'm
going to look it up while we're talking. Go ahead. Look at the Olympic countdown.
We are almost halfway through that development phase. I have effectively another year and a couple months to finish that out, if that, for some of the folks that are trying to go for 28. After that, you have to go to war with the army you've got. And people say, well, you got 2 years. Like, no, you have 2 years to make tactical refinements. The bulk of the physical development and the bulk of the technical base development has to have already been completed, and preferably had to have been completed in the previous 4 years.
Yep, you got 1,219 days.
So being a skilled coach means understanding what is needed for each situation. By the way, the situation I was mentioning with Vika that I had to drill with her, I actually was able to eco out with Chloe. I was able to eco out with a couple other people. Like, they got it very quickly, where I said, hey, here's the game. You gotta do this first. You gotta do this first. But Vika, who came up mostly through eco development, did need to drill that one situation. Knowing, I know I'm using juniors as examples here, and someone's going, "Oh, we're talking about senior level." Look, what matters, we're talking about skill acquisition. Skill acquisition in judo occurs when people are juniors. That is the primary phase of skill acquisition. I might add something, but by the time someone's 25, they have their base game. There's some things that are easier to add. Like, you can teach somebody how to grip fight at 23 and get them really far along by the time they're 26, 27. That's actually a nice thing about gripping.
100%.
But you can't, for deep, highly complex gross motor movements, it's hard to add those at 25, 26, 27.
Right. So case in point, you coach Rufus. You can't, now it's not the time to be working on Ouchi or Uchimata with Rufus.
I haven't done any of that with Rufus.
We still have time. Rufus is a full-grown adult.
We're done. And no, what I do with Rufus is I work on gripping, positioning, adjustment, and then there might be some work I do with him that's like, it turns out something was missed and it's remediation, but like, I haven't had to do that. And I don't have time to do that because I need him to be ready to fight in Salt Lake next week. Or a great example, you and I were working with Madeline Solis last year. Maddie had to get ready for a big match with current U.S. World Team member Nicole Stout. The longest Maddie had ever gone with Nicole was 10 seconds. They had a good match. Nicole won, but they had to end up having a good competitive match because we had 2 hours the day before we had to get Maddie on weight anyways to go over gripping sequences because we were able to add those in because I was having a lower gross motor requirement. So you can add those in up until the morning of.
Correct.
But you're not going to add Ken Uchimata the morning of.
Not without the reps, my man.
No.
Now, and this is my thing. You and I wrote the scouting report for Kayla Harrison. We talked about this. Once we submitted the scouting report to Jimmy Pedro, Jimmy looks at the scouting report, and then he has to create situations in practice and go over them and drill. If the hand goes here, Kayla, you do this. Don't take your hand from here. Keep your hand here. And then you have to make her fight from those positions. Now, you can say it's gamed, but it's a lot of drilling going on. Like she has to drill attacking from those. There has to be a level of mental representation, which I know is against some of the eco approach. There has to be a level of mental representation that she has where she identifies what she saw and then she goes.
So at the end of the day, the answer is both. The answer is learning when to use one or the other. And if someone's trying to claim that it's exclusively one or the other, they're trying to sell you something, and their products inferior to what I'm trying to sell you.
We're trying to sell you on the truth.
Yes. And please donate to Masters for the love of God.
Yes. Well, let me tell you something. This discussion has gone on for a small period of time. I think it's good because a lot of people need to hear the discussion with the understanding that it's as we always say, it's not either or, it's and. It's the right amount of and per what you're dealing with. And we haven't seen on our side, because our sport is a lot higher developed, we haven't seen on our side an eco-developed national champ. But judo doesn't allow for an eco-developed national champ. The way judo is taught, it doesn't allow for it. Like if you do Iri Murate Seoinage, if you do Seoinage like the Yang brothers or like Chris Velasco does, you're going to sit in the pocket and you're going to do thousands of those over and over and over again until they look exactly like the coach wants them to look.
I'm making them to that. We've seen a junior national champion who was eco-based, and I still had to grab that kid at the intermediate level. And I had to grab that kid and go back and do deliberate practice with her.
Which kid is this?
Victoria.
Oh, Vika.
Yeah, Vika.
Did Vika start with you?
No, but she didn't have a lot coming in with me.
Okay.
She had 2 moves coming in with me and could kind of move around. Even then she did do a lot of drilling prior because she was doing judo during COVID and there was restrictions.
Correct. And my argument is this: the way judo is made, even if you are primarily eco, the way judo is like, judo requires some level of hybridization. You have to. You have to. 100%.
Like,
it's just no right.
And I said, I got her there, and then to get her further, I had to throw my answer. Nope, I have to go back to the stuff I did with Dr. Ferguson in 2010.
And watch this. By default, we have to teach you Kimmy.
And by the way, when I went back and added back into the deliberate practice element for Victoria, at 12 years old, she's currently a nationally ranked cadet. She beat a cadet bronze medalist from Canada, a national cadet bronze medalist from Canada, to get on the ranking roster. So that is someone who, when I brought it back and said, okay, this is not going to be a product of both, they had to jump within 4 months.
Now, here's the thing about deliberate practice. If you can sit in the pocket and do it, you can get some massive jumps. I think it's like this. I think eco provides you with massive jumps early that are exponential. I think the eco provides incremental jumps later.
Yes, but that's true of both. Both
Correct.
do that. And it's just a case of what's needed at the time. Anyways.
Yeah, well, no, 100%. 100%. I just, watch this. This is my point. I just feel like when we need to make the incremental jumps and it needs to be fine-tuned later, it takes too much time for eco to find that out.
Yes. Because by the time I'm a year out from the Olympic trials, I don't have time to put Uchimata in.
No.
I don't have time to. And by the way, there's gonna be so many.
Or figuring out how to stop it. I need to tell you, keep your fucking hand here. Put your other fucking hand here. Like we had this discussion with a client. Don't move your goddamn hand. If you move your hand, you're gonna get what? Thrown.
And by the way, there's going to be some nogi person go, well, I learned Uchimata without doing that. Well, you're throwing Uchimata against people who don't know Uchimata. You're doing Uchimata against people who are beginners in the space of Uchimata. Go try to throw Justin Flores Uchimata, see what happens.
And that's the thing about eco is only as good as the room and the instructor, and deliberate practice is only as good as the instructor. Yeah, that's it. We'll talk about dummy-based learning later and how we use a deliberate practice with the dummy that doesn't have any resistance and how that also works. But until next time, this is Dr. Rhadi Ferguson. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Coffee with Rhadi. I finished my coffee hours ago. It was such a privilege and a pleasure to have you on, Dr. Ron. And we'll talk again. I think we're going to do this a lot more as we get ready for the quad. And then we can talk about the headaches of fucking coaching.
The new medication I need to get a prescription for. Yes.
Oh my gosh, that shit takes years off your life. And we also need to talk. We need to have a discussion about wearables, because Dr. Round is the person who introduced me to the Whoop. I've used the Garmin. I've used what's the other one for the heart rate monitor? The
Polar.
Yeah, we have clients that use the Polar.
We've thrown all three on clients before.
Yeah, right, to check the validity. I haven't used the Aura Ring before, but I know people who have. But we need to talk about that in terms of coaching. The one thing that I didn't want you all to miss today is that the combination of strength and conditioning and the eco-based approach with the deliberate with the drills-based approaches. Once you find out the shape of the thing, like if it's a two-handed single leg RDL, then you have that conversation with the strength and conditioning coach. The strength and conditioning coach then puts in the single leg RDL for you so that you can get those movements done, and then you strengthen in those movements, and then you can transfer those over, and then the coach helps with the transferability over into the environment of play. Those things are important. The reason why the drills-based approach works on my end is because I understand the four pillars of human movement, which are push, pull, level change, locomotion, and rotation. My blind spot was I was like, there's not a whole lot of locomotion that happens in judo, so I abandoned the locomotion. The eco approach made me put the locomotion back in, but I was thinking about the locomotion occurring in a running, walking format, and the locomotion occurs in a movement format, and it's more circular, and it requires the use of the ashiwaza along with the gripping, which is the locomotion that happens. So I had to put that locomotion back in, because the locomotion didn't occur in isolation. The locomotion occurred with the push-pull. Yes. I was looking at it differently. So we'll talk about a lot of these things later. But Dr. Round, thank you so much, man, for your input today.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson.
Appreciate it. Let them know one more time where they can find you.
You can find me. You can find our website is martialartsforsocialgood.org. You can find us on Instagram at High Noon Judo or at Martial Arts for Social Good. Thank you for your time and have a great day.
All right, take care. Remember, I love you, but God loves you best.
You are getting ready to listen to the voice of Dr. Rhadi Ferguson, 2004 Olympian, four-time national judo champion, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, author, speaker, and coach.